Another day, another designer collapse, and once again the headlines are doing somersaults to avoid saying the obvious. A label worn by Kate Middleton has gone under, weighed down by debt, shrinking sales and rising costs. Yet the press still clings to the idea that her wardrobe is some kind of economic life raft. At this point, calling it influence feels less like analysis and more like superstition. If Kate's clothes truly carried the commercial magic we've been promised for over a decade, we wouldn't be watching brand obituaries roll in like clockwork. And yet, here we are again, watching another business close its doors while commentators rush to remind us, almost nostalgically, that she once wore the brand, as if that detail should change the outcome. Tabitha Designs Ltd is the latest name added to a growing list, and the story follows a script so familiar it could be printed on the back of a coat dress. First comes the reminder of royal exposure. Then comes the uncomfortable fact that the business collapsed anyway. Heavy debt, declining sales, rising operational costs, and not a single sign that a well-photographed outing slowed the fall. Royal exposure didn't stop the numbers from bleeding red. It didn't freeze creditors in place. It didn't magically turn browsers into loyal customers. The brand failed just like many before it, and no amount of nostalgic name-dropping can change that reality. What makes this saga almost comical is how stubbornly the press refuses to connect the dots. For years, readers were told that a single Kate appearance could transform a struggling label overnight. One walk, one wave, one carefully pressed coat, and suddenly success would follow. That myth has now outlived the businesses it was supposed to save. If that influence were real, brands linked to her would be outperforming the market, not collapsing at the same rate or worse. Instead, we have Eponine London, Seraphine, Bennett, Jaeger, Orla Kiely, Seraphine, Ted Baker, and now Tabitha Designs Ltd, all shuttered, restructured, or pushed into administration. That's not a winning streak, that's a pattern. At some point, you have to stop blaming the weather. Yes, the pandemic hurt retail. Yes, inflation hit margins. Yes, the market is brutal. But those forces affect everyone. If Kate's fashion pull truly carried the billions the press once bragged about, the labels she wore would show resilience. They don't. They fold. And when they do, the narrative quietly changes. Suddenly, it's not about royal influence anymore. It's about tough times. Funny how that works. The magic disappears right when accountability should begin. There's also an uncomfortable truth no glossy magazine seems eager to say out loud. Attention is not the same as allegiance. Shoppers today don't build wardrobes around symbolic dressing meant to look tidy in news photos. Fashion thrives on movement, innovation, risk and relevance. Kate's public style is defined by repetition, nostalgia, and safe choices that echo the past rather than engage the present. That might photograph well, but it doesn't inspire modern consumers to open their wallets again and again. A coat dress can dominate a headline for 24 hours and still leave a shop empty by the end of the month. And here's where the humour writes itself. The media keeps insisting this look has power, yet the balance sheets keep responding with a polite but firm no. If fashion influence were measured in headlines alone, every brand would be thriving. Unfortunately, bills are not paid in clippings. Rent doesn't accept nostalgia as currency. Staff can't be compensated with a reminder that their designs once appeared next to a headline about timeless elegance. There's something almost tragic about how designers are lured into believing exposure equals survival, only to discover too late that prestige doesn't cover payroll. royal fashion operates at a very safe distance. Designers shoulder all the financial risk, while the institution keeps the shine. When a brand collapses, there's no follow-up, no acknowledgement, no safety net. The photo that started the hype becomes a footnote in a liquidation notice. The benefits flow one way, and when the music stops, it's the designers left standing without a chair. That's not support. That's spectacle. Contrast this with the way Harry and Meghan are discussed, and the double standard becomes impossible to ignore. Meghan's fashion impact was mocked, dissected, and criticised endlessly, yet brands she wore consistently reported spikes in sales, website crashes, and sustained demand. The difference wasn't symbolic dressing. It was relatability, modernity, and a genuine connection with contemporary consumers. And still, that reality was downplayed, dismissed, or framed as accidental. Meanwhile, Kate's influence was inflated into an economic legend, even as brand after brand quietly failed. The press loves to accuse Harry and Meghan of disrupting tradition, but what they truly disrupted was a carefully protected illusion. An illusion that royal visibility equals value. An illusion that symbolism can replace substance. An illusion that titles alone can keep businesses alive. The collapse of yet another designer linked to Kate's wardrobe doesn't just challenge that story, it demolishes it. And instead of re-examining their claims, many outlets simply move on, hoping viewers won't notice the growing pile of contradictions. What's especially telling is how responsibility evaporates. When a brand is praised, the credit goes to royal influence. When it fails, the blame shifts everywhere else. Economic conditions, market pressures, global uncertainty, all valid factors, yet conveniently irrelevant when the influence narrative was being sold. You can't have it both ways. Either royal fashion power is real, or it isn't. And the evidence keeps pointing in one direction. At this stage, continuing to push the myth feels almost cruel to designers. It encourages businesses to mistake exposure for security, to believe that one high-profile moment can replace long-term strategy. The reality is harsher and far less glamorous. Fashion success requires sustained demand, evolving identity, and genuine consumer engagement. None of that can be guaranteed by a single appearance, no matter how heavily the press hypes it. The collapse of Tabitha Designs Ltd isn't an isolated incident. It's another data point in a story that's been unfolding for years. A story where royal association generates attention but not loyalty, headlines but not revenue, prestige but not protection. And until media narratives stop confusing symbolism with demand, designers will keep learning this lesson the hardest way possible. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan continue to be scrutinized for every choice they make, even as their impact, influence, and cultural relevance remain undeniable. The irony is hard to miss. The couple accused of lacking relevance consistently drives conversation, while the figure praised as a fashion powerhouse leaves behind a trail of shuttered shops. If that doesn't make you question the narrative, nothing will. So, the next time you see a headline breathlessly announcing that Kate once wore a now collapsed label, don't treat it as proof of influence. Treat it as what it's become, a warning label. Because history keeps repeating itself, and the press keeps pretending it's a coincidence. And if you appreciate analysis that actually follows the evidence instead of the fairy tale, make sure you support Sussex Insights by subscribing to the channel. This is where we cut through the spin, call out the double standards, and give Harry and Meghan the fairness they're rarely afforded elsewhere. Hit that subscribe button, stay with us, and we'll keep breaking down the stories the way the headlines won't.